So what in the world does a protest from 250 years ago have to do with writing something that can actually change minds today? Well, as it turns out, a whole lot. Let's dive into this really fascinating connection between a historic act of defiance and, believe it or not, the modern act of revolutionary writing. Okay, picture this. It's a freezing cold night in Boston Harbor. For months, tension between the American colonies and Great Britain has been just simmering. And it's all about a tax that colonists are absolutely refusing to pay. You can feel it in the air. Something big is about to happen. Now, before we get to what happened, I want this number to just sink in for a second. 92,000 pounds. This was no small symbolic gesture. No way. This was a massive, undeniable statement. But what on earth weighed 92,000 pounds? That's right, 92,000 pounds of tea. But look, if you just call the Boston Tea Party vandalism, you're completely missing the point. This was a calculated, strategic protest. Let's break down exactly how this whole thing unfolded. So, the fuse was really lit back in May of 1773 with the Tea Act. By the fall, the colonists were organized, they were resisting, and by December, the Sons of Liberty had this realization. If we stay silent now, we're basically accepting this injustice. They knew they had to act. And I want you to notice the precision here. We're talking about 60 men boarding 3 specific ships. They weren't there to riot or to loot. They had one single target, the tea. Why? Because the tea was the symbol of British overreach. They destroyed only the representation of the injustice, which made their message absolutely impossible to misinterpret. Okay, so we've got this incredibly bold, symbolic, historical event. But how does that translate to, putting words on a page? Well, this is where the protest becomes prose. It's where we see that a powerful message is, in itself, a form of protest. And that's the real question at the heart of all this, right? How can an act of defiance from 1773 possibly give us a blueprint for writing something that truly matters today, something that actually challenges the way things are?
And here's the answer. This is the core idea. Your writing, when it has something important to say, isn't just a bunch of words. It's an act of protest against a flawed idea. And your job is to deliver it with so much clarity, so much conviction, that people literally cannot ignore it.
Just like the Sons of Liberty, every writer with a big idea faces this fundamental choice. Are you going to soften your argument? Whisper, play it safe, try not to make anyone uncomfortable? Or are you going to declare the truth, clearly and boldly, and just accept whatever resistance comes your way? And that brings us to the Tea Party framework itself. We're about to break down 4 clear principles drawn directly from that night in Boston Harbor that are designed to help you write with that kind of conviction and create real change. But before we get to the steps, let's be clear about our goal. Revolutionary writing isn't about just being loud or aggressive. It's about crafting a message that's so clear, so necessary, that it fundamentally changes your reader's perspective. You're not just informing them, you're making it impossible for them to go back to their old way of thinking. And here they are, the 4 principles. Super simple. 1, identify the injustice. 2, make it symbolic. 3, act boldly. And 4, accept the response. Now let's see how this actually works for both the protesters and for a writer like you. This table just lays it all out, side by side. For the colonists, the injustice was taxation without representation. For you, the writer, it's that one flawed belief you're trying to tear down. They made it symbolic with tea, you do it with a powerful story or a shocking statistic. They acted boldly by dumping all that tea, you act boldly by stating your thesis, no hedging, right there in chapter 1. And finally, they knew there would be consequences and they accepted it. As a writer with a big idea, you have to do the same, because revolutionary ideas always face resistance. Okay, this next part is maybe the most important and kind of contrarian inside of this whole framework. It really challenges what most of us think about how to change someone's mind. We're taught to use gentle persuasion. This framework, it suggests something way more powerful. Just look at the difference here. Gentle persuasion kind of hopes to nudge. It accommodates, it asks nicely. A bold declaration, it disrupts. It doesn't ask the reader to change. It makes the cost of not changing so painfully obvious that their old beliefs just become impossible to hold on to anymore. And that's the ultimate goal right there. You are not writing to make your reader comfortable. You are writing to build a case so compelling, so undeniable,
that staying stuck in their old way of thinking feels way more uncomfortable than actually embracing your new idea. You create this urgent need for change.
So how do you actually do this? Right now, in your own work. It's time to write your own declaration. Let's turn these big ideas into a concrete checklist you can use today.
Here it is, your action plan. First, name the injustice. Get specific. What's the one false belief you are fighting? Then, find your symbol. What's that one story or statistic that makes it real? Next, state your thesis boldly. No apologies. And finally, test it. Read your introduction out loud. Does it sound certain? Does it sound convicted? If not, rewrite it until it does. Because that clarity and courage, that's what gives your words power. Because in the end, it all boils down to this one single, powerful question. Revolutionary writing demands a choice. If you really want to change minds, you have to commit to the truth of your message, even if it's not popular. You have to decide if you're writing to be liked or to be right. So what are you going to choose?